Welcome to Que Baje de Lows y lo vea. That's the name of my podcast. I have a podcast called Let Robin D. Lows came down from the heavens and see this. This is the name of the podcast.
Excellent.
The Lows and Dios, which is God in Spanish, is
Hmm.
it's very similar. So we are going to
Yeah.
make that stupid puns like that on the podcast. And this
Okay.
is going to be. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. This is going to be one of the very first interviews in the podcast and my first interview in English, so pardon for my English. I'm very thrilled to introduce Gareth Ryder-Hanrahan here in my podcast. Yay! My name is Alvaro Roman, for instance. Okay, Gareth, how are you?
Actually, right now I've got a cold, so I'm not great, but I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I'm Gareth Hanrahan or Gareth Ryder-Hanrahan, depending on how big the spine of the book is. And I'm a freelance writer and game designer doing lots and lots of stuff for Pelgrane Press.
Did you start at your very first works as a designer are from 2002, more or less?
Indeed.
Hmm.
Actually, where I started was writing scenarios for the local gaming convention,
Hmm.
which when I was back in college, also with Kat Tobin, who runs Pelgrane Press, we were both involved in the local convention, and I wrote lots of scenarios for that and put them up online.
Mhm.
And then Fantasy Flight Games many years ago approached me asking would I do a Blue Planet scenario for their Blue Planet game. So I wrote that. That was my first bit of freelancing, and then I sort of wandered into it as a career. When my real life computer job went away, I thought I'd try writing for a few months, and I'm still here writing.
You have worked for a lot of big games like Traveler, Paranoia, Doctor Who, Conan, The One Ring, Pathfinder.
Mhm.
You started as working for little adventures for convention. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. And how was that? You approach the publisher and say, "Hey, I have these ideas," or
It depends on the publisher. With like my first bits of freelancing were sort of like small bits of assignments, like we want a scenario for this book, or we want like a chapter on steampunk adventure ideas. Then when I started doing it full time, I was working for Mongoose Publishing, and Mongoose had like a bunch of different game lines, and often you just be handed a title and said, right, give us 128 pages on starships or 128 pages on druids. Although for other lines in the game that or other games that was much more focused. Like we want like a book on this particular aspect of Glorantha, or we want a really technical book on spaceships for Traveller. Um, these days, it's a bit more of a give and take. I'll go to the publisher with going like, okay, I have an idea for a book in this line, or they're going like, we're thinking of doing something along these lines. What ideas do you have for like a big, a big Delta Green adventure, or we want you to do a book of adventures for the One Ring set in Eriador. Send us an outline. So it's more sort of a give and take between myself and the publisher, as opposed to just being handed a blank sheet and said, right, go do that.
okay. And which is your first solo for your first game? Your first you make the core book on.
I actually have done very, very few core books, despite having been working in role playing games for like nearly 20 years at this point. Um, I seem to have I sort of fall to a niche at being the second person on a lot of games. Like someone else does the core book, and I'll come in and like do the first supplement and sort of shape the line after that. I think my very first actual core book was Mongoose had a line of like OGL games, like rules based on the D&D third edition, the Open Gaming License, in different genres. So we did OGL horror, which turned out quite well, and they gave me OGL Wild West as well. But at that point, the only Western movie I'd ever seen was Back to the Future Part 3. So there was a frantic 2 month period of me like trying to write about paladins while watching every Western movie I could lay my hands on, and
It's
that was like
a
in the
little
days
bit
before.
different from Back to the Future.
Exactly, yeah. And that was the days before streaming as well. So it was like buying like VHS tapes and like of cheap westerns and just like having them on in the background. Um, for Pelgrane, I've done a lot of games where I'm in the second edition of something that Robin's already done. Like I did the second edition of Fear Itself, second edition of Easter Terrorists. At
Need to see
some
the
point, we're
blues.
talking about doing. At some point, we're talking about doing the second edition of Trail. That's been a long contemplated. We've been talking about that for years, and we will do it at some point. That is not an official announcement, but
It's like an exclusive, like, ooh,
no,
for me.
no, it is a thing that will happen at some point in the future, and we keep talking about it, and it requires literally the stars to come right with Ken and I having free time at the same time, and Pelgrane having time in the production schedule. But
Okay,
yeah,
I have a question.
yeah.
When you are making second contribution for a core book like Fear
Hmm.
Effect or also
Yeah.
Terrorist, did you work closely with Robin DeLows, or is you like, yeah, this is my material, you can work on it, or how was the approach on the design?
Um, generally, it depends on what we're doing with the second edition. Um, if there's a if the game needs to be changed in some way, if like something isn't working, then I would like work closely with Robin. In the case of like in the Easter Terrorists, Robin did like revise the actual Easter Terrorist rules, and I came in and did the Station Duty Adventure, which was started as a separate product and integrated in, and I was basically just like sort of playing like adding stuff in on top. With Fear itself, um, I did like all the writing there. Robin just like did the original first edition, and I did I
Mhm.
think all of second edition. And there, was a question of keeping the stuff that made the game uh, like what it is, because it was nothing like broken or problematic about it, and just building on top of it,
Mhm.
and sort of fleshing it out, adding more stuff, basically make it a bigger, more flexible book. Actually, and then for Wilson's second edition of Youth City Blues, and there was stuff that we wanted to fix. There were we wanted to try the new pushes system, where basically instead of spending instead points from having points each ability, you just have a pool of pushes, make it sort of simpler, more focused game. And there was more back and forth as like he was rewriting the parts of the core rules, and I was doing adventures and revising the text needed to be changed based on his sort of core rule changes, going through the rest of the book and plugging stuff in there. So yeah, as with everything, it's very much the only collaboration depends on how integrated the changes are. If it's a question that Robin or someone or the other person doesn't need to look at everything, I can just go off and make the changes.
Mhm.
If we're doing changes that will ripple through the whole book, then there's more communication between parties.
Okay, for Esoteric is one of my favorite games
Uh,
ever. So
uh,
it blew my mind when I read about the station
mhm.
duty part. That
Yeah.
was one idea of yours, like, hey, Robin, this is my idea, or it was like, I want you to take this and think about it.
How Station Duty happened, I think, was I think the original idea was Simon Rogers, one of the co-owners of Pelgrane. He got me to do that, And that basically was during a period when I was freelancing for lots of companies and wasn't doing small stuff for Pelgrane. And Simon, I think, was trying to think of getting me on board, was trying to sort of train me up a bit. So that went through, and that was very much sort of like, that and these Losny Quartet were basically my sort of like, sort of training projects, because they went through lots and lots and lots of phases of revision where basically I would send in a draft and either Ken or Robin would come back with lots of requested changes and things that gotten wrong, and I'd try again. Like Stations usually went through more rounds of revision than anything else I've done ever. Went through like 5 or 6 different drafts of it. And
That's harsh. It's a lot of work.
indeed, especially as you get paid by the word, so you're not sort of like getting extra revisions are sort of are costing you. But no, and then when I finally got it right, by that point they were planning to do a second edition, so I thought, right, we'll take this and plug it into the core book. So I said, originally going to be standalone, and then got fused into the core book, and sits quite well there because it gives this sort of a solid structure for play.
You started with Pelgrane Press with an adventure for Arkham Tales. I don't remember, Arkham Detective Tales, I think that is the name.
Yes, the terribly named Arkham Detective Tales.
In Spanish, it's a different name. When they published it in Spanish with Edge Entertainment, the previous company, they changed to Amazing Tales or something like that. I don't remember the exact name.
Well, the issue was, the original pitch was we'll do some adventure set in Arkham. And then we moved to New York. We never actually changed the title of the book. So it's Arkham Detective Tales, all set in New York. So we ended up releasing a second version of it with an extra adventure set in Arkham. And I think our thinking was like, Arkham's like a state of mind and so forth, but it just ended up being confusing and people got annoyed. So it was one of the few misfires.
How was your first in gig for Pelgrane? Is like you approached them or they approached you?
So I mean, I knew Cat Tobin wasn't with Pelgrane at that point, but like I knew Simon and like the Pelgrane crew from conventions and Dragon Meet and so forth. So we were like hanging out with friends and friends. And I wanted to do more Cthulhu stuff because a lot of my college conventions have been Cthulhu based. Like I've done a Cthulhu game at the local convention every year since 1997. But at that time, Chaosium was very much in the depths of issues at that point. Was the forum management, and they weren't doing many books. And when Pelgrane came out with a Cthulhu game, I went, I could do Cthulhu games for them, or Cthulhu stories for them.
So it's like something more organic. You had a previous relationship with them, and
exactly.
I think you can design something.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
And so I did a book of scenarios for them, and they liked it. They were okay. And then a few years later, after Station Duty and Zlozny Quartet, I sort of proved that I was sort of like in tune with the Pelgrane style of game design and so forth. And at that point, they said, "Why don't you come on board on a sort of semi-permanent basis?"
Why? Cool. Did you the Lord Finder game is one pitch of yours, or if it's like I think you can do it because it's like the previous step to put it you in a core book.
Yeah, I mean, Lord Finder was. I mean, the gaming industry consists of basically D&D, Pathfinder, and random debris. I mean, it's even more ridiculous these days, where D&D is just this like massive, all-encompassing thing, and everything else is like this like tiny splinter. And Pelgrane we're very small, and occasionally we sort of look over at this giant, massive gamer that is the D&D fandom and go, could we get some of that? So Lore Finder was basically just sort of like sort of a fishing hook, going like, even if like only a tiny fraction of D&D players ever see this and ever think, "Oh, I should play a gumshoe game," it'll be worth it. So we just sort of like trolled it out there as an experiment, and it did okay-ish. I think it was very much just sort of a, here, look, there's a better way to invest in games. Have a look at this. There's ever any plans to do anything more with it than that? But it did its job. It like sort of stuck into the D20 marketplace and found some people there.
And there is any plan to make the same for the next edition of Pathfinder or something like that?
Plan sounds like a very well thought out.
So everything needs a plan, but
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
In particular.
I mean, we have talked about doing either like a Pathfinder or like Lore Finder for Pathfinder or Lore Finder 5e. But it may happen at some point. It wouldn't take too long to do, but there are other books that have taken priority, and the D&D market is even more sort of like focused on itself than it was back then. Because it used to be that basically D&D players would sort of migrate off to other games, whereas these days there's more emphasis on using D&D for everything.
Yeah.
So it'd be harder to sort of peel them away.
Okay. So, did you start with program with a series of small adventures, like invasive procedures for Fear itself, and then you make a Lord Finder, and then start with making your contribution to the core books.
I'm trying to remember the exact chain of events.
I have the RPG geek list, so I think this is but maybe you don't know.
You see, you can't rely on that, because like sometimes books leapfrog each other, or like
I understand it.
Definitely Zlozny Quartet, which was the sort of the first adventure for. Oh no, because it was also Dead Rock 7, which was the first adventure. So I'm going to come in and do the first book on the line, because the first adventure book for Ashen Stars, I think, was my first sort of like with those two, Ken or Robin, who the lead writer was, like Ken for Zlozny Quartet and Robin for Dead Rock 7. They wrote the adventure outlines and I fleshed them out. Invasive Procedures was all me. After, but basically the Zlozny and Dead Rock 7 were sort of my 2 big sort of like solidifying me as a regular Pelgrane writer books.
And a very few. There is a very short amount of time between the Esoterrorist core book, the second edition, and the Esoterror summoning book. This is something you was doing at the same time, or this one like oh, I want to explore this, and how was that?
Something I think I wrote for the first edition, and then we just basically tweaked it for second. Something's basically like just trying to find things for Easter eggs that weren't straight adventures, because they'd done a bunch of adventures for East Terrorists, or before I came on board of Pelgrane. So there were quite a few, like all the Albion's Ransom stuff, and Station Issues out there as well, and the adventures in the core books. So I wanted to do something that wasn't just a straight adventure, but because East Terrorists is set putatively in our real world, and each East Terrorist cell is fairly unique, it was hard to sort of a generic supplement. So I tried to find something that basically would be usable with lots and lots of different East Terrorist adventures, different cells, and sort of flesh out what Robin had hinted at in the core book, and make that more something the players can interact more with in terms of countering summonings and so forth. Um, but yeah, that was one of those odd projects where you're sort of building on little hints and little asides that were sort of like thrown away
Uh,
in
I
Easter
love this.
Scorebook or in
Sorry.
or in the Book of Unremitting Horror.
Mhm.
Like little bit, just pick up little bits and try to like, okay, the writer like may not have intended anything by that thing, but like if I take this sentence and this sentence and this sentence, what's in the middle? What's the sort of connecting tissue of them?
Exactly. That's the one of the main things I love about esoterics is that there's like a big empty in the it's like an emptiness about the Ordo Veritatis, and you never know if they are good people or bad people, because you can read everything as these people are very bad people, very stupid people, or you can say like this is the most clever men on earth. So for me, the terrorist summoning is that bad, like 5 times
Yeah.
or something like that. Because for me, when I was reading the book, everything put you like a little hints about this emptiness, but it never gives you any context. So whatever you think the Ordo Veritatis is, this book have an impact on you. Is like I had the urge to put in notes in the book, like, oh my god, this is, I have to to find the most about that. But I love this game because you don't have more you can't research a lot about it. You have to think, what do you want to be the ordo, and then you can make everything. And this book is like I don't know. I love this book. It's like for me it was like honey or something. I don't know.
Well, Robin's one rule for the Ordo is that they won't betray you. Like there will never be any terrorist scenario
Yeah,
where,
but he is
ah
the
ha
Ordo, so I don't think.
ha. But I agree that like you've all different interpretations of what they're really like. Like are they like sort of like a sort of government department that's very sort of bureaucratic, very efficient? Are they these sort of like secret source, sort of secret like white knight sorcerers, like the what are the ones in Dracula dossier? The Soleimani, the like secret order of good wizards who basically protect the world. Are they like a sort of like instinctive antibody of humanity that basically like they don't even really know why they're doing it, but basically because this like evil infection has happened, there's a sort of psychic like natural psychic response, and they just like happen organically. I don't think they have made the good guy faction be very very ambiguous and open for the GM to sort of shape as they wish.
I love that because for me it's like and when you are talking to another GM who is running a game from a lot of time, you can talk about him about what do you think about Ordo Veritatis, and everyone have a different opinion. And everything is connected to
Yeah,
these books, and I love that idea that I don't know anything, but I know a lot. So it's I think about it as a micro context. You have a micro context,
yeah,
very 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 small, and you put your emotions, or you put your experience on that micro context. So you make your own big context for your own game, and
yeah.
it's like it's very flexible, and at the same time it's very strong, and it blew my mind every every time I get the book again, and it's amazing for me.
Yeah. But that's one thing I love about role playing games in general, but especially scenarios. Like I said, I started doing games at conventions, and how the Irish system worked is basically I would write a scenario for the convention, and then like 5 or 6 tables would run the same scenario. So basically, everyone at the con would play the same Cthulhu scenario or the same D&D scenario, all the tables. And I loved like the half an hour afterwards, where the players would get together after their games and go, "What happened to your game? Oh, we we married the princess and we fought the dragon. There was a princess. There was a dragon. We were stuck in a sewer for
That happened to me because in Spanish we published one of my books for esoterrorists, the Chronicles of Schuylkill Chronicles. Schuylkill is a county on USA, and when I talk about with some people that has played my own campaign, and there is every single time there is someone that say to you, "Oh, my favorite part is this," and it's like, "This is not in the game. This is never happened. What?" And I love it. It's a very fun and emotional satisfaction. I don't know. It's amazing.
But what fascinates me is they're all starting from the same point. Like every group will have the same opening scene because, at that point, here is the mission. Here are your characters. Everyone starts from exactly the same point, and then they just explode in different directions.
Yes.
Which makes writing. That's one of the big challenges of writing scenarios. Like you know where they are at the start, but as the game goes on, the possibilities diverge and diverge and diverge and diverge.
Yes, and when you approach the writing as in your books, the guter player is in
Yeah,
English. Yes,
yeah.
when you approach the writing of the books, you use another different approach, or you are like the same.
Well, what I found with writing novels, sort of the big sort of psychic changes to make was in a role playing game, everything is there for the players. You set up the scenario and you go, right, what do you do? And the players run with it. With novels, because you're writing the characters as well, you got to give them the motivation and so forth. So I tried writing novels a few times before the Gutter Prayer, and I would come up with this fantastic plot, great characters, and I go, right, what do you do? And nothing would happen because there weren't players there.
Yes.
So for the Gutter Prayer, I basically crippled a character who was so impulsive that she would grab onto any plot hook that she was given and charge after it. And the writing novel, they would basically start following her around as she blew things up. With later novels now, I've gotten better at creating characters who will who are already enmeshed in the plot and how things happen more organically. Um, it's because in a role playing game, you want to give as many options, as many ways through the scenario as possible without hideously bloating your word count. With novels, you want to basically always have them going to the most dramatic route through, which requires closing off possibilities and squeezing things down. So they're almost like the inverse of each other. Like a role playing game is like a novel inside out, where basically everything is opened up as opposed to shut down.
Okay, and what do you want, or what do you prefer, writing novels or writing? It's a hard question, I think.
It's a hard question, and for the moment, I don't have to choose. Um, role playing games comes more easily to me. Certainly, if you give me a role playing game project, I can see like how it will all come together. Like you say like we want um, a campaign for this particular game using these themes. I can go right. Okay, here's chapter 1 will be. Here's chapter 2 will be. Here's chapter 3 will be. Here are the main beats of the plot. Here are the cool things the characters will do. That may change as I'm writing it, but I have a very clear idea in my mind of the shape of the book from the very start. Whereas with novels, I find myself chopping and changing and being much more uncertain and being much more worried about whether will this thing actually be a novel or just this endless series of anecdotes that wanders around the place.
Yeah.
So far, they've all come together in the end, but it's a much more nerve-wracking experience because they have it internalized the novel structure as well as they've got the role-playing structure.
Okay. And we have talked about a lot of about esoterrorist, but we didn't talk about a lot about the fear itself, which is the book we are presenting for our Spanish audience,
Right.
and also the esoterrorist summoning. But
Yeah.
for fear itself, you previously said that is more flexible for you. You make you have more freedom to do stuff on it.
Well, Fear itself was the first edition of Fear itself was, and I have to thought it's the wrong word, but it was like East Terrace was the first big gumshoe game, and then they did. So Ashen Stars or Trail itself or Trail Cthulhu first. Can't remember which one the other
I
was,
think
but
Fear
basically,
itself was the second
yeah.
Gamsu book.
But after that, they did these two big lines, which like there was a big science fiction line and the Cthulhu line was obviously going to be huge. So Fear itself, like just sort of ambled along. It got like it had the first edition was very small. It was quite generic. Like whereas these terrorists, like you have this like sort of like secret agents go investigate things. Fear itself was very much about you are ordinary people. Um, and ordinary people in horror games tend not to last very long. Like
No.
with these terrorists, each terrorist has a campaign structure. It has a clear, like here is the mission of the week. Here's the monster of the week. Your job this week, East Terrorist agent or Order Veritas agents, is to investigate this weird cornfield that eats people. Next week, you're investigating this movie production that shut down when the lead actor like vanished mysteriously. With Fear itself, it worked really well for one shots because you can easily do like you are the kids who go off and find the monster in the cabin in the woods, or you're moving to the new apartment and happens to be an occult temple. But it's harder then to do a second adventure. So my first thought was, okay, we'll focus it very much on fairly self-contained either one-shots or short campaigns for all operations and something. And then we'll also have like a section on longer campaigns. Those who want to do longer campaigns with characters who have basically become like professional occult investigators, or just have a mystery that's so big they'll take a whole campaign to solve. But the second edition was very focused on structure, on how the game adapts to those different structures. Because basically, there's stuff that works very well in a one shot that falls apart in a campaign, and there's stuff you might do for a campaign that is is needed in a one shot. Like a one shot, you don't need a vast amount of background. You don't need super detailed characters. But what you really want are characters who will like snap at each other, who will have a strong emotional conflict in that one scenario. That wouldn't be sustainable for a campaign. You can't have a campaign where player A and player B are at the throats the whole time, because that would just get very wearing for the players. But that was great in one shot, where basically you got 3 hours of drama and then story's over. So I sort of took the usual Fear itself rules, the investigative rules, and like the basic rules all stay the same, but the various setups are different depending on whether you one shot, a mini series, or a campaign. And then I did basically a sample one shot, sample miniseries, sample campaign to show what I was babbling about.
Yes, the second edition Girl book have a lot of things about the structure, narrative, and tips for the players or the GM. So it's like a very short amount of rules, and then a lot of context to give you a exact flavor. This is very difficult in the role-playing games to do survival horror or slasher, because in the convention of that type of movies, the people are going to die in
Yeah,
all the time, not only in the last part, which is
yeah,
the common aspect of the role playing game. And
yeah,
I love how you put this escape pool, so you can give a lot of tools for the players to survive all the
yeah.
previous step, so they can all be in this last step, but with the pressure of who is going to take all these points and how. And this is very clever because it's very subtle. It's not a huge mechanic which is very integrated in the game and everything is so connected on it. It's like you have this pool, and then only on the third act is going to have any interest in the game. So it's amazing. I love that part of the game.
Yeah, I mean, survival horror is it's a classic type of horror, but as you say, the structure of those type of adventures doesn't really work in role playing games. So I didn't want to basically integrate it into the core rules because you have to play survival horror. But at the same time, I wanted to address it, so it's in like a one page sidebar. So, um, but yeah, I mean, role playing games do really dictate a lot of the structure of the scenario, just because you have to have like five or six protagonists as opposed to most horror movies, which will have like one or two protagonists and some ablative hangers on who get killed to show the stakes. Um, there has to you can't really you can't really kill people until the last 45 minutes or so of a scenario if it's a one shot, because otherwise the player gets bored and is sitting there on their phone. Um, you have to have like a mystery that involves everyone, but you also want like individual hooks for individual players. It's a very odd setup. So I'm glad it was able to like take space to address. Here's how you do all these different things in a one shot in a campaign and in a miniseries.
In the Pelgrane webpage, there is a lot of articles written by you with alternative system or alternative rules for fear itself. For
Yeah.
example, you have rules for playing monsters in the game, which I think
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. And I have tested the alternative stress stability rules, and I think it's perfect for one shots because it's very brutal. The people is going crazy
Yeah.
very fast, and that's perfect for one shots. These alternative rules, it's something you want to do when you were writing the core book, or this like in the last when the book was released, you had more ideas and you had to want to pursue it.
It depends. For most of the articles are come afterwards. Like you're going to like you're thinking about what you could have done, or like if you have a if you put your strongest ideas into the book, so it's not like you sort of write like you the alternate stuff will rarely be like this is a better way of doing it. It's always like here are things that might work in these situations, or we're just toying with this, like see if you like it. Um, or increasingly, like this whole series of that's reading articles, which are basically stuff we couldn't fit into the Wireless Connection campaign because it was so long. So basically, we chop
Yeah,
out lots of text so that was plugged in. But I mean, the core rules will always be the ones that have been tested the most and are
yeah.
the most generally applicable.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so basically,
Okay.
don't put too much faith the page XX stuff. It is often sort of like would this work? I don't know. Let's find out by asking people to try it.
Yes. For example, the rules
No.
about being a monster.
Yeah.
I think about a lot about it because it's clearly you are an enemy of the Ordo. So you
Yeah.
want to be a good guy, and you are a werewolf or a Frankenstein or
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah.
and you want to help people. But if the Ordo Veritatis look on you, you are going to
Yeah.
to be killed in a very
Well,
inflexible
well,
way.
yeah. I mean, the relationship between fear itself and its terrorist is kind of fuzzy. Like, not every fear itself campaign takes place in the same universe as the Ordo as these terrorists. Like, you could have fear itself games and nothing to do with the Ordo. Like, we have the Outer Dark as a sort of a generic pool of badness, but they don't always the same assumption. Like, all these terrorist stuff has these terrorist assumption about, like, how magic works and how summoning works and so forth. Whereas fear itself can be a bit fuzzier on how much magic there is and how easy it is to do and how, like, what sort of monsters there are out there.
Also,
Um,
the aberrance ability, it's like that.
yes,
It's very fast, so you can
yeah,
be more flexible and be more like a movie where the monster
yeah,
have different abilities to surprise the audience, and this
yeah.
is very very beautiful. But I love the idea of you are the bad guys for the Ordo, and I'm going to make another game for the same players where you are going to execute your previous character. I love that idea, and this is something that is always in my mind when I reading Fear itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the upcoming Ocean Game book, like, the Order is there in the list of enemies as, like, here are all the different, like, enemy factions, and there's, like, the Order are mentioned as, like, we don't know who these weird guys are who keep, like, investigating us and trying to shoot us, but here are their stats, because that is a very, like, not quite its own cosmos again, but it's a much more high weirdness style of play.
Yes, because there is you are playing in Fear itself, and then a lot of people with guns appear to be there with connection
Indeed.
with every police station and everything, and you are like, What is going here?" And I love this, and I am, for example, I drink with some of crossover between the two games, like Fever in the cabin, the movie, the Joss Whedon movie, the
Yeah,
cabin
Cabin in the Woods.
cabin in the
Cabin
woods.
in the
Okay,
Woods. Yeah.
because for me is one
So
part of the.
that's a very close thing, actually. Where the kids are playing Fear itself, and then the guys in the back are
Yes, there is something. There is a
not
very
quite the.
amazing
Yeah.
a plot that they don't have
Yeah.
any clue of it, and I
Yeah.
think it's beautiful. You can have a lot of layers
Yeah.
in a very simple book, because fear itself has to be
Yeah.
simple. It's important to
Yeah.
be like that, and I think you can reread everything. You can after
Yeah.
you read Fear itself, you can go to the previous books of Erso Terrorist and
Yeah.
reread it with a different with a different view, with a different point of view, and it can connect everything. And that's in part because whatever we were talking about later, the emptiness of the Ordo, that there is
Yeah.
a lot of fuzziness there too.
Indeed.
I don't know
But I
if
mean,
that's something you want when you were writing. You want to put it there, or this like I'm crazy and I'm thinking that, but it's not there.
no, I mean, it's not like we have a sort of, a sort of secret East terrorist document with, like, here's the truth, here's, like, the grand master plan. But you naturally, as a writer, sort of pick up on references other people have written and try and sort of, like, hand them on and, like, hint more stuff and create your own like I often like put in things I don't know what they are, but someone else will pick up on them.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, I'm currently putting the finishing touches to the Ocean Game, and the Ocean Game was started out as a Fear Itself supplement by Dave Alsop, and
Hmm.
he wrote the first part of that like when Fear Itself was in development. So this is back in 2005 or something. It's like it's very old
Yes.
text, and he's long he's off doing stuff for Nightfall Games and Slane Shoes Do Art. So I basically taken his text and tried to basically interpret it. So basically, the book that would come out would be like a third order interpretation of the original idea,
Hmm.
which is very interesting because the references in there that I put my spin on. So basically, I've tried to explain them the way I would, but they're also there for like other GMs to come in and pick up on as well.
Yeah.
So there's an awful lot of sort of symbology and mysterious references that you can see connections between, but you're not sure if you're. It's like sort of pareidolia, where are you really seeing them? Are they really there, or are you just imagining them? And that's a great ground for the GM because they can pick and choose what's real and what's not.
Hmm.
Because I mean,
I'm
ultimately,
now my hype levels are very very high because I knew about the Ocean Game,
it's,
but I don't really knew because no one knew, only you and, and
yeah.
the
Well, I
people
mean,
involved.
but the Ocean Game, we've been dropping references to it in books for ages.
Hmm.
And often, so I hadn't seen the Ocean Game documents up until I started writing the current book.
Hmm.
So I knew that they had some vague plan. So when I was doing it's mentioned, I think, in Easter Summoning,
Hmm.
or it's definitely for itself. And at that point, I wasn't quite sure what the Ocean Game was, so I dropped references in. And now, as I'm writing the official Ocean Game book, I got basically the original Ocean Game text, and I'm also trying to work in my references, which don't necessarily completely align at first, but now I'm sort of twist the text so they all line up. So it's a very sort of interesting, I would have done it that way if I'd started off from a blank page, but
Hmm.
because I'm trying to fit in all the previous material, all the previous references, and the unpublished but will now published Ocean Game stuff, it creates something that's not entirely me, not entirely Dave. This weird sort of hybrid creature, which is in a lot of ways more interesting than what would happen if I started from a blank page.
I
It,
am starting to hate you a little bit because I can't read that material and I'm excited about it and please do it now. End this book, please do it for
as,
me.
as I said, I've Kat said to hand it in at the end of the month, so I'll do that, and then it's out of my hands for a while and into hers, and you can go and harass her about production schedules and layout and so forth. And printers. She likes to play with printers.
Okay. Okay, we're going to be wrapping up. So
Cool.
there is something in my mind, and I want to ask you. A lot of your work, your games, your scenarios, it's about even the Ocean Game. It's about exploring someone else's ideas. You
Yeah.
have this book, and I like okay, so I'm going to explore only this bit, or I'm going to expand these ideas to another book. There is any do you have any plans, or do you have any interest in doing your own game, like a Gamsu game only with your setting?
I don't know. I've pitched a couple of games um, at times, but I like sort of getting all the juice out of an orange, so to speak. That like I suspect I would be quite happy playing with my red box D&D books that I got when I was 12.
Yeah.
Because like role-playing games by their very nature have so much possibility in them that you could play one game for a lifetime and still not finish it, so to speak. So I like getting a new role-playing game and going, oh, here are 10 things I would really love to do with this immediately, and writing 3 or 4 of them down into an adventure book, and actually getting so the sweetest parts out of it. Yeah, I mean, I will at some point do my own games, but what I tend to do is look for things that where games don't exist, and often there's a reason games don't exist there. Like I've one of my sort of like long-term projects is a thing called Drone, where basically you're playing. The gimmick of that is it's the near future, and they've basically terrorist groups and criminals are using this drone technology, where basically if you want like infiltrate a corporation, you arrange for a traffic accident of Bob the executive. Bob the executive gets run over, basically scooped out, turned into a cyborg, and then one player is playing Bob. The other players are playing basically Bob's advisors slash new players that basically voices in the head, and they can hack into the world around him and play things. And the question is will they be able to get Bob to steal the corporate secrets before Bob recovers off his personality to fight back?
Okay.
And that's a cool concept for a game. The issue is it's hard to structure it when you're not sure how many players you'll have, and when one player is sort of acting against the group or trying to act against the group, and it's also really hard to write scenarios for that. So I think there's a really cool idea there, and I run great games of it, but I haven't been able to translate that into here's a 103-page role-playing book where you can basically create your own games and so forth. So yeah, I need to now I said it's lower, but it's focus on stuff that's more approachable, more doable. But yeah, nothing in the pipeline at the moment. I've got enough supplements for other people's games to keep me going, and also novels are where I get a lot of my own stuff out.
Okay, so now you have to end the Ocean Game book for me at least, and then you have to do that game because it seems pretty awesome for me. I don't know, but I think it's very very interesting. Whatever you said.
Well, it's very interesting. It's very hard to write. Actually,
Yes, I know. I have a lot of projects like, oh, this is very very cool, but it's like I need the time for this.
It sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how role-playing games dictate a lot of structure. You need to have a hook for the whole group. You basically can't kill people until the end of the game. There needs to be a sort of structure through it. You can't. The more role-playing games are very very flexible in some ways, but the structure of them is it's hard to tamper with the actual structure of play.
Yes, it gives you the flavor of everything. You have to make the excuse that orange you said before.
Exactly.
And it's important. The core book for me, it's important for any core book to give you an impression about what do you have to do with this book.
Yeah,
you can everything. Every little GM can do anything they want, but I'm giving you this because I want you to do exactly this, so you can do whatever you want. But this is important in a core book because I love. I have read a lot of core books, and there's some core books that is like you can do anything. You can do anything with this, and I don't think that's the correct way of doing it. It's better to say this is my pitch. Do this and explore this in every single direction, and you are going to be happy with it. And I think that's the great games is that. That's why I love Unknown Armies, for instance, or Eyes of Terrorists, or Fear itself, and this kind of games. Okay, I think this is going to be the last question, or maybe it's like 15 question after this. Do you think it's possible, or do Pelgrim have any plans for doing Fear itself in a solo book like True Confidential
Yeah.
or Night Blake Agents Solo Ops?
I don't know. It'd be
It's
one of the
the
easier
movies
ones
is
to do.
like that.
Certain.
Is the horror
Yeah.
movies is like there is
Yeah.
one character and then a lot of
Yeah.
so I think it's very organic to it.
It's very easy to do certainly, but with um with Trail and with the Cthulhu Confidential and Solo Ops, there you both had a sort of chunk of text that applied to all the scenarios. You have basically the Cthulhu style, the Cthulhu rules and the vampire rules, which fit into all of them. With Fear, monsters tend to be sort of custom made for the scenario, so I suspect it'll be done more as they've done a few shorter PDFs. So I suspect that would be a more natural fit for it. So basically, you'd have a one-shot horror scenario that would be 30 pages long, as opposed to a 200-page book which has rules and
Yes, it's
3 or 4 scenarios. Yeah, because
maybe
for
it's
yourself,
not for a big book, but
yeah,
like alter egonomia. I don't know the
yeah,
correct
that's the
name.
one.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's like something. I think there is a spot for it for a little game, like 40, 50 pages
yeah,
with simple rules for it for Fear itself, because I think it's very part of the horror genre. I think it's
absolutely.
very interesting
Yeah,
to
I mean,
to do.
for yourself it has always been so suited with one shots. It would work very well for that. So I'm not sure if there are any plans, but I suspect if anyone wants to pitch that to Pelgrane, they would find a receptive ground.
I'm going to,
Yep.
to put it
Yeah.
in my bin. Okay. So, well, I don't have any question. I don't know if you have something else to say.
No, thank you very, very much. What's next out for me? Pelgrane. For Pelgrane, I've got Ocean Game to finish off. The Borealis Connection has been done for a long time and is in layout. That's the big campaign for Full Delta Green, which would be huge. And I'm also finishing off the Poison Tree, which is the campaign for Trail. Um, and I also have novels coming out from Orbit and from Gamon, are doing the Spanish translation of the Black Iron Legacy books. So the second book is just out, I think, and the third book should be out sometime this year. And there's another English novel, The Sword Defiant, coming out in May. And that's me.
It's a lot of stuff. Do you like have one project and jump between projects, or is like I have one project and go straight with it?
No, I'm jumping between projects. Right now, I'm doing Maria for the One Ring, Ocean Game for Pelgrane, and a thing that hasn't been announced yet, which I've been told not to mention for another game.
How's your
And
brain?
also,
How can you? Because for me, the very first step of every game is you can jump from one to another. But when you
yeah.
are writing one book, it's like very aggressive to my brain. It's like it's
Oh
everything
yeah,
there, and everything I look is through that book. So for me, jump
absolutely.
from one book to another when you are in the latest states of it, it's very difficult.
Oh, absolutely. My head is very, very full at the moment. I don't normally have quite so many things on at the same time, just the way deadlines have fallen. With some of them, it's easy. Like with Maria, I know Lord of the Rings so very, very well that it doesn't take as much cognitive space, because it's all there, and I don't need to remember everything, because I can pick up a couple of the rings. I know exactly. I can remind myself very easily. It's like a memory palace where I can
Yeah.
I don't need to hold everything in active memory, because I can go, oh, this one line. I have this whole adventure hanging off this one line in the book. that's fine. I can read that line and I'll remember the adventure. But for original stuff like the novels or um, the
The
Ocean
Ocean
Game
Game.
stuff,
Mhm.
that's all just running in active memory, and I'll be very glad to get it off my chest and free up that space.
It's very interesting. So I don't know. Thank you very much. I love
No,
this chat. It was very interesting, and I think I hope you get better for your cold.
thank you very much.
So thank you very much, and we are going to stop the recording, and I'm going to say goodbye to you properly.
Cool,
So
cool, cool, cool. I
bye.
shall zoom off and do the Ocean Game. Take care.
Bye.